planning to do it is have everybody mute, and then well, we've still got a few people coming on. Jane is coming on. Hi, Jane. So if everybody mutes, and then what my plan is to, I've got some sort of an outline of frequently asked questions that I was going to, I'm just going to kind of go through. And if you have an urgent question while I'm talking about that, wave like that, and then turn your mic on and ask the question. Otherwise, I'll kind of go through it, and then we'll have time. I'll go through it pretty rapidly, and we'll have time at the end to ask questions. Does that work for everybody? Yeah, give me a thumb up or something like that. So what we were going to talk about today, obviously, is broadband, and I'm just going to cover the basics of broadband based on questions that are always asked of me. And so my background is I'm a retired electrical engineer, but I spent 5 or 6 years working with the Oneida County Economic Development Corp with a technology committee to bring broadband to the rural areas of Oneida County. So we wrote grants. We were successful in obtaining 5 different grants from the state of Wisconsin to build fixed wireless towers across the county, and I've retired from that committee, but they're continuing to do that project. So that's the way Oneida County is working. But we're just going to talk generically how this is working. So David, you missed my intro, but I said if you have a question in the middle of this, rather than typing in comments and everything, just kind of wave your hand and turn your mic, and I'll call on you, and you can turn your mic on and ask the question. Otherwise, we'll do questions at the end, if that works for everybody. So just to start out with, what's broadband? You know, a lot of people are kind of confused about broadband, and you shouldn't be. Broadband is just, for us at this day and age, is just high-speed internet. The term was coined back when people dialed in and connected to the internet, and broadband was supposed to be a way that your computer could be connected all the time to the internet, which invariably is what most people have right now anyway. So just don't worry about it. It can be used interchangeably with high-speed internet. And what is high speed, we'll talk about a little bit in a minute from now, a few minutes. The other question is, what's the difference between broadband internet and commercial cell internet service? And of course, that's blurred a little bit now. Everyone probably knows that if they have a smartphone, you can get internet via your smartphone, and as well as internet via some of these other services we're going to talk about. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But basically, the difference is that if you get internet via your cell phone, you can only utilize it with your cell phone unless you have something that pushes the signal to your computer, like a hotspot or something like that. The other one I'm going to touch on briefly that a lot of people ask about is what is 4G and what is 5G. And I only mention this because it's a subject of conversation in a lot of online discussions. And 4G simply refers to the 4th generation of technology for cell phones. It was basically invented by the marketing people so they could say, we've got the best, latest and best. Now you start hearing people say that our new cell phones are 5G capable. And 5G obviously is just the next generation of cell phone protocols or cell phone technology. And a lot of the wireless internet applications that we're going to be talking about use the exact same protocols. 5G is just very, very fast internet connection that you'll see in the metropolitan areas. We probably will never see it here. It's in the range of 1,000 megabits, and it's just super, super fast. And we're still trying to take baby steps to get beyond the basics. So this is a good time to stop and talk about internet speed. Speed on the internet is referred to as BPS, or bits per second, which you don't need to worry about what that is. But when people say I can do, you can for $35 a month, you can get 10 MIPS or 10 megabits. That usually means 1,000 bits per second. So you don't have to worry about it, except for the fact that speed is the methodology that you buy internet these days most of the time. So if you want to pay for up to 5 megabit, you'll pay one charge. If you want to pay for up to 15 megabit, you'll pay another charge. So it's basically it's just like miles per hour. It's the measure of how fast the data is coming down the line to you. I might also mention that in most cases, your data that's coming down to your computer is going to be much faster than the data that's going back. And they do that to save a little time, save a little room on the line, because you typically don't use as much bandwidth when you're sending a signal back, like a return or an answer to an email, than you do when you're downloading, let's say, a web page or a movie. So it's just something that I don't want you to be confused when somebody says MIPS or whatever. It's the number that you need to worry about, not worry about what's involved with it. So the next one we're going to talk about is how much speed do I really need? And this is the basics of what you need to know about. So these are just rule of thumb. Everybody else is different. Everybody uses the internet differently, but here are just some rule of thumbs. If you have a speed of 1 to 3 megabits, that's sufficient for email and web browsers. Not sufficient for probably downloading movies or other types of media, or gaming. If you have a speed of 3 to 5, up to 15 megabits, that's fast enough to stream movies, as long as it's fairly consistent. And then you get up to 25 megabits, which are games and interactive applications and things. So when you're in a metropolitan area, 25 to 50 is probably fairly common, but not up here. I'm going to back up a little bit and say what is the well, we'll cover that here in a second. So the next piece of internet speed is multiple users and multiple devices within your household will make a big difference on your speed. So if you and your spouse are both online, obviously what I said, if you had 5 megabits and it would work for downloading, if you're trying to download 2 different movies, or one person's is doing internet browsing and the other person's trying to download a movie or some other kind of media, it's going to impact your speed. So the bottom line is that you'll probably try and contract for as much speed as you want to afford with your internet bill. And the real question that everybody asks, we're going to get to now. Is everybody kind of following it now? Does anybody have any questions? Wave your hands. And okay. Why is broadband coverage so poor in the rural Northwoods? And so first we should define rural Northwoods. If you live in Rhinelander or Minocqua or Eagle River, some places in Three Lakes, you have access to some pretty fast broadband via cable or digital cable for the most part, from Spectrum and some folks like that, and fiber. And so that's probably the best way for you to get internet. Sorry, my dog's chewing on my ankle here. So when I refer to rural Northwoods access, I'm talking about how are you going to get broadband outside of these, I hate to say metropolitan areas, but these more populous areas of the Northwoods. And the biggest problem is that The traditional way to get internet is via digital cable, or what we refer to as fiber. And that's fiber optics, which can manage a lot of internet data in a single strand. And in the Northwoods, it costs about $100,000 a mile to lay cable or lay fiber. So if you have a cabin on a lake and you're 3 miles back down off the road, it's $300,000 minimum for them to get fiber back to you. And if you're trying to pay, and they're charging you $50 a month, 25 of that is going for services and the commercial internet and the wholesale internet that they're buying. It's pretty hard for them to pay back that $300,000 at $25 a month. So that's our biggest problem, is that we're so spread out, and because of the topography of the Northwoods, meaning you've got lakes, and this is the perfect thing you see on the internet when the dog gets in your picture. When you get you're trying to go around wetlands, you're trying to go around lakes, the roads wind around various areas, you got to cross rivers and just certain places. The length of that fiber, or the length of that cable, makes it prohibitively expensive. So that's one reason the coverage is so poor, and in some cases the coverage is so expensive. The other one is that a commercial internet service provider pays a lot more for wholesale internet up here than he does in, we'll say, Milwaukee or Chicago. They're paying for backhauling the data up here. They're buying it from a very large provider, and so they just pay more for the commercial, for the wholesale internet than you would someplace else. So, and they're of course charging you for it. So that's the basic problem. That's why we say that in order to get high-speed internet into the rural areas in Northwoods, we're going to have some kind of state or federal support for in order to help pay for some of the costs that the internet companies aren't willing to pay for themselves. So then I'm going to talk about what are your options for digital for broadband in Oneida and Vilas County. Almost everybody has access to, or should have access to, what they refer to as DSL from Frontier. And Frontier provides DSL internet access just via their copper lines that they're running to your house for telephones. And this technology was developed many years ago. I have never seen a DSL line that provided more than 3 megabit speeds to the home. A couple years ago, Frontier got a bunch of Frontier got a bunch of grant funding from the federal government to provide fiber up here. They laid a bunch of fiber, but for the most part, they ran the fiber from their switch in Rhinelander or Monaco or whatever to these little small switches that are spaced around out on roads that are called D-slams. And then they tried to deliver the rest of it via the copper lines that run to your house. And for the most part, that tripled the internet for some people, which meant they went from 1 megabit per second to 3, which is still hardly worth having. But many people, DSL is the only option that they have so far. Digital cable is available in some areas, and a good example of digital cable is the Broadband system that's available in 3 Lakes. That it's just run from house to house within the primary metropolitan area of 3 Lakes, and that's been gradually replaced with what I refer to as digital fiber or digital optical fiber. That's the gold standard for internet these days in most areas. And so there's digital fiber running up and down major highways. And if you're close to one of those highways, you might have access to it. There's digital fiber, for example, into Minocqua, and Spectrum then has access to it, so they can provide fairly fast internet in Rhinelander and Minocqua if you happen to be have access to their cable or their fiber. In Eagle River, ChoiceTel is a local internet service provider in Eagle River, and they have been successful in running internet cable or fiber cables within the town of Eagle River, and they run it on existing power poles, existing utility poles. So it's a pretty practical way to get internet service. And what I understand, ChoiceTel's internet and cable services or TV services pretty good in the areas that they serve, which are primarily Eagle River. They've run some lines recently up to Land O'Lakes and some other areas that are near 70 and some of those other major routes. But once again, we're still not addressing the rural areas of the county. Fixed wireless is probably one of the fastest growing technologies in the Northwoods. And this is a way, this is very similar technology to cells, but the internet service provider puts a small 200 or 300 foot tower up. They have they run internet services to that via microwave, and then they broadcast their internet service within about a 3 or 4 or 5 mile range of that tower to homes that happen to be within range. It's not without its problems. If you got a bunch of trees in the way, or you get topography in the way of hills and stuff, that will block it. But we happen to be within 2 or 3 miles of a tower. I'm in Sugar Camp, and there's a tower over by the White Stag, so we happen to be accessed there. So we get 15 megabits via fixed wireless. In Oneida County, Northwoods Connect provides fixed wireless services to 400 or 500 or maybe 600 by now customers. In Vilas County, SonicNet provides fixed wireless services to a number of areas with their technology. And I mean, these are still, it's expensive you put a tower up and you have to run microwave backbone to it, and you buy internet services to it. And then it's not as trouble-free as fiber, but that's probably the best thing we have going for us in the rural areas when we're trying to bypass, as I said, wetlands and lakes and things such as that. So it's the hottest thing going right now, and but it's not foolproof. We still have times of downtime. My internet was down this afternoon, and I called them up, and they had their towers had been hit by 2 of their 20 towers had been hit by lightning in that storm Sunday night. So they had guys up on the towers replacing equipment to cover that. So it's not great, but it's one way to do it. We talked briefly about cellular phone technology, and all of the internet service providers that I've talked about so far, DSL, Frontier, Spectrum, SonicNet, Northwoods Connect, all provide internet to you with no limits on the amount of data that you can download. So you can download as much as you want, and the way they charge you is by speed. So Northwoods Connect, for example, has a charge for 5 megabit. They have a charge for 10 megabit. They have a charge for 15. You can get 25 or 30 megabit if you want to pay the fee for it. And I believe SonicNet probably has a very similar charge. And so it's unlimited charge, but it's you're throttled by speed. The cellular phone access is the other way that a lot of people that are out in the middle of nowhere can get internet, but you're paying you're not going to have unlimited data charges. I know people, well, John Langland, who a lot of you folks know, until recently, John said he was paying $250 to $350 a month for his internet services using a Verizon hotspot that allowed his computer to access the internet. So, you know, it's, if you really need it, it's a choice. The other choice is satellite internet. And you see that you've seen the ads on TV. They can deliver internet to anywhere in the country. And if you live out on a ranch in Wyoming or you live wherever, you can get satellite access. But this is via geosynchronous communication satellite that's sitting up in geosynchronous orbit 22,000 miles above the Earth. And the problem with that is that the lag time in getting the signal from the satellite down to your computer and back up makes it difficult to do any type of interactive application. And then the last I heard, most of these satellite companies charge you for data. So it's an option if you really need it, but most people that I know of that have used the satellite services have not been happy with it, but it's maybe the only way they can get access. How much does broadband typically cost? Most of you are probably familiar with this, but you know, broadband services can range from $35 a month up to maybe $85 a month, depending on your speed that you want to use. So if you're using one of the all-you-can-drink data services, most of those are going to be, as I said, probably in the $50 to $60 range if you want the medium speed options. I had a question in here as who's funding broadband development in the Northwoods, and we've touched on that a little bit, but you know, the broadband services that we get via the internet service providers are all private companies. I mean, and there's no exclusivity like in many cities with a phone company or anything like that. So each of these internet service providers is funding their own capital investment. They're funding their own services and support. So that's you know, that's the biggest problem. Now there are some grants available from the state. In the past, the state of Wisconsin has provided some money to support some of the rural applications. Never near enough money, but they have provided some funding. The federal government has provided some funding for internet service providers, but they seem to mostly hit the very large providers like AT&T and in some cases Frontier, and it doesn't seem to me that those services ever trickle into the rural areas of the Northwoods. So we hope that as you know, as the state continues to monitor broadband costs or broadband services in the rural areas of Wisconsin, the legislature will provide more funding to help support some of these services. But until then, we're kind of stuck doing it a little at a time. The grants that I wrote for Northwoods Connect, we had to come up with matching funds for at least 50% of all the costs. So it isn't free. There aren't free dollars. We had donations from, you know, schools and towns and everybody else to help fund some of that. Or the company has to fund it. So I got one more topic and then we're going to go to questions. And this is kind of a fun one. So that topic is what technology is on the horizon that we should be aware of. So Elon Musk, who many of you probably know is the CEO and founder of SpaceX, has a company called Starlink that I believe is probably part of SpaceX. So Starlink is launching small satellites in a near Earth orbit to provide internet services for the world. So when I said a geosynchronous satellite above North America was 22,300 miles up, the Starlink satellites are about 300 or 400 miles up. So what that does is provides a much closer link for to minimize the lag time in the service. Now the good news is they're closer to Earth. The bad news is they don't have as much coverage. So their ultimate plan is to put 15 or 16,000 satellites up in low Earth orbit, spinning around over us. They have, of course, if you have your own rocket company, you can afford to do that type of thing. They launch these small satellites about 60 or 70 at a time. Sometimes they'll piggyback them on another launch for a government satellite or something like that. Right now, they have about 500 in orbit, and they're ready to start testing. And they've got most of these orbiting in accessible to the northern areas of the northern hemisphere, which means that when they say they're ready to start testing or beta testing internet services, they're ready to start testing in the northern part of the U.S. and Canada. And our area of the Northwoods just barely fits into the northern area of what they're hoping to test. They've sent out messages. They've said we're going to be beta testing, so you can sign up and maybe we'll pick you to beta test. And so once again, it's a small satellite dish about 18 inches in diameter that fits on your roof. You don't have to have a specialist come out and hook it up. It automatically orients itself to the satellite that it's receiving data from. And I've heard that that they're going to provide services for the $70 to $80 a month range. So that's what's coming. Who knows if it'll work or whether we'll ever actually get it, but it sounds good, and we'll just have to see. So that's my pitch for frequently asked questions. So if anybody has questions, feel free to wave at me, and then I'll call you and you can unmute and do it.
Dave, there's 2 questions in the chat.
Okay, why don't you ask me those? Or let me pull them up from chat. So this is from George. Tell us why municipalities can't set up their own networks. Oh yeah, it's a good question. So when I started working with the Oneida County Technology Development Group 6 years ago, there were a bunch of us that were tech people and as well as business people, and we were charged with bringing internet to the rural areas of Oneida County. And one of the things we talked about is, well, why don't we just buy our own internet services, put our own towers up, do this and that, and have the municipality do it. And my background is, as I said, is technology, and I ran software companies for about 30 years. And I said, okay, sounds great. So who's going to raise their hand and volunteer to take the service calls on Friday nights and Saturday nights and Sunday nights, or the rest of the nights? And you finally get to it, and you realize that somebody has to answer Steven's question when he calls and said, it was working a minute ago, but now I can't get it to work. And what do I do? Or how do I hook this up? Or David says, I'm finally going to sign up for your service. Can you come out and install it? So then we got a bunch of installers doing it. But so it's not a small thing to do, but there are municipalities that are doing this. There are small towns in Colorado and Kansas that have set up little nonprofits, and they're using existing towers for fixed wireless, and they're providing their own services. So there are people that do it. There's a whole network of people, organization that supports that, but it's not without its drawbacks. But if you wanted to do it, there's nothing to stop you. There are no limitations. It's not a regulated service in the sense that you have to have permission to do it. You do have to buy licenses for radio transmissions and that type of thing. And then Mary had a question: Evers has appointed a new broadband task force. Does anyone hold that hope for us in the North? Well, maybe. I know a few people that are on there. I think the person that is chairing it is a guy named Chris Myers, who does the teleconferencing for one of the medical groups that work up here. And telemedicine, of course, is a big thing, and they want to do more and more of it, especially with coronavirus issues. So they're on it. The other person that's on it is Lori Collins, who is the president and CEO of SonicNet. So there are a few people that are not commercial large vendors that you typically see as lobbyists that get on these committees. There are a couple of local people that are on the committees, so I'm hoping that will do it. You know, my biggest fear with this type of thing is that they get together and talk about what to do, and I kind of feel like there's a lot of technology that will work. We don't need anybody to do another survey to find out if people want internet. What we really need is funding, and funding for the commercial companies so that the commercial companies can then expand their networks, whether it's ChoiceTel to run more fiber over to smaller communities, or whether it's more funding for SonicNet to put up more towers to reach more places, or whoever. But it's it's a tough problem, and it's even tougher when you throw education into it, and distance learning, all these people trying to do it. The Three Lakes School solved their distance learning problems when kids had problems that they had to use the internet for. So they put hotspots on all their buses, so the kids could do their internet when they were taking that hour-and-a-half drive back to their home, or in the morning when they're coming in. But now that they're no longer on that bus going back and forth, that service hasn't always worked. And once again, it's expensive to use cell phone-based internet services.
So can I ask you a follow-up?
Yes.
So I had emailed, so my situation is that I was just like seasonal until my job went remote in March, and we decided to make the move north, and now a permanent residence. And I'm lucky to live on a little road that has pretty good service. I have 20 megs upload through Frontier, which is pretty good.
You must be right next to their fiber.
Yeah, or something. I don't know. It's been okay, except when it's not okay, and then Frontier is, well, I won't even go there. But so I emailed a bunch of people about what the situation is in the north, and explaining that it's an economic development issue as well for the north, because this new remote worker economy isn't going away. And without decent internet, the Northwoods can't attract people who have these very well-paying jobs and have money to spend at local businesses and infuse into the economy, and are not people who are big consumers of services. So I think they're the kind of people that you want in the area. But so I emailed a bunch of people, and I got a response from Jeff Verdorn.
Yes.
You must know him from Oneida Economic Development. So he was really great, and we went back and forth. And I got a response from the Boulder Junction town chairman, who said that they're doing something in Boulder Junction with CenturyLink, I guess, in the town of Boulder Junction, and feels like they're getting pretty good coverage. But I didn't get a response from my representative to the Vilas County Board, the Vilas County Board president, and some other people that I emailed as well. So my question is, what can we, like, this is great, what we're doing tonight, but what is the action that we can take to sort of push this forward? Like, who should we be contacting? How, what can we do?
I mean, it's definitely an economic development. We all have an issue. We all have stories that somebody moved to the Northwoods and want to work from their home, and they can't, so they had to move back. The other issue that I pushed really hard with Oneida County Board for Development was 75% of the people that own lake homes, or 75% of the people in the in Vilas County as well as Oneida County are non-residents that own lake homes. Or I should restate that. 75% of the people that live on the water are non-residents. And we did some surveys a few years ago that said that they would spend 50 or 60% more time in the northwoods at their home, and maybe it's more now with coronavirus, if they had fast internet and they could access their local area networks at their business and that type of thing. So, I mean, this is a huge market for economic development, but you know, nobody has any money. Oneida County doesn't have money to invest in this. Vilas County doesn't have money to invest in this. So it's tough. I want to jump to a point that George just made. George just said a Wisconsin state law prohibits taxpayer funding for municipal telecommunications networks. Rural electrification and roads were funded directly by the federal government. And I'm a little confused at that because Wisconsin Service Public Service Commission has been funding rural telecommunications networks for the last 6 years. Not a lot of money, but they've been funding that. So I don't know if that means that's not taxpayer funding, but it seems to me that that they're doing that. So I don't know how that falls in there. Can you comment on that, George?
Oh, Steve has had his hand up as well while you're waiting for George's reply.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Say, could you just speak to some of the hurdles for placing of towers? I know you have to deal with things like zoning. Of course, not everybody wants a 300-foot tower in their backyard, so you may have pushback on that depending on where the placement is. And I know that, you know, this comes up budgetarily speaking every year for the county board, and they usually are pretty good about wanting to commit to a certain dollar amount every year. But as you said, I mean, it's pretty expensive, even with these towers. I don't know what the per cost for the towers is, but I mean, even if they commit $100,000, how much do you get, you know, for that kind of money with just the tower type service?
Well, let me address the not in my backyard thing. Just using an example, the Northwoods Connect folks have been trying to get a tower in the south part of Three Lakes for some time, and they've had many people that live around the area and have cabins around the area have asked for it. So they got funding through a grant, and they got a plan to put a 300-foot tower up that would serve I don't know, 200 or 300 people, and then I guess there was a big conscious effort by some of the homeowners that said, we don't want a tower in our backyard. We want high-speed internet, but we don't want a tower in our backyard. And a couple of those guys were friends of mine, and they asked me about it, and I said, you know, it's not. They said, we drive by all these towers on Highway A all the time, and we don't want one of those right next to our house. And I'm going, the broadcast towers that you see on Highway A in Oneida County that are 500 or 700 feet tall are not the same as the towers that SonicNet and Northwoods Connect are putting up. They're pretty low profile. You can barely see them. 200 foot is standard. Sometimes they'll go 300 feet. And you can barely see them, especially if you're down at lake level looking up. The trees are usually blocking them. So, but they managed to convince the town of Three Lakes to rule against it, and so I don't know if there will be a tower there. So it's, you know, this not in my backyard is always a problem. And but you know, as I told this friend of mine, I said, if you want high-speed internet or even low-speed internet, you're gonna have to have something like that, because nobody's going to run fiber out to your house. And he agreed and said, yeah, I understand what you're saying now, and it makes sense. So, but we'll we'll see what happens there. But what, Stephen, what your other question was how much does it cost? A typical 200-foot tower and or 300-foot tower and all the hardware that goes on it costs around $50,000 to $75,000, and that's installed. So if they get 50% of that as a grant, and they have to fund 50% of it, so they're having to come up with $35,000, $40,000 to place it, and then they have to come up with a location. And in many cases, a local farmer will provide a location at no charge or allow them to put internet into their office. But in other cases, they have to put it on private land. And they've been pretty successful, as has SonicNet, getting local landowners to allow them to put a tower up once they see that it's a pretty low profile tower, just so that they can all have internet access within the range of their house. This is one of the few that's been challenged. Okay, George, can you put that back up, or let me look at it again? George says municipal networks. Oh, did you want to say something? Okay, George says municipal networks defined as those owned and operated by municipalities. Towns, villages, etc. Funding from state has only been to private companies. If Arbor Vitae tried to set up a community-owned network, they could not use taxes to subsidize it. He said, post my email address and I'll send you the relevant state statute. No, don't send it to me. I'm trying to get out of that business. But yeah, I guess that is a good point, that in a lot of those areas, I know in Colorado where they've got municipalities, they had to get some state legislation to allow the municipality to do it. And that's primarily because they don't want the municipalities competing with private companies. So that's, I mean, it's, I don't know. David, are you about ready to ask a question?
Yeah, I'm interested in what can be done at the state level. So it kind of dovetails a little bit with what George is saying. Number one, funding. I think the state gives grants or gets grants. And when I was looking into this a year or two ago, it looked like Minnesota was investing about 5 times as much as Wisconsin was. And so it seemed to me part of it is just having a state legislature that actually wants to support this and not just do lip service, which is what we're getting right now. And second of all, is there any kind of laws that could be changed that would make things better in addition to just funding?
Well, the funding piece of it, you're exactly right. Back when 5 years ago, when we started writing grants to the Wisconsin Public Service Commission, they had $500,000. And then Tiffany came in and said, okay, I'm going to do you guys a big favor, and I'm going to triple it and give you $1.5 million. So even the $1.5 million was spread among the entire state. And when I said one tower costs $75,000, along with all the other equipment and service and everything, that $1.5 million didn't go very far. The last grant they did for the 2-year budget cycle was $10 million. So that means they had $5 million for the last cycle and $5 million for this cycle, which is a huge improvement. But during those same times, Minnesota has been doing $25 million, $50 million per year to support broadband. And so the bottom line is that the Wisconsin Public Service Commission has a structure, they have an organization, they have a way that people can write grants. They like to have grants that have matching funds so that they know that the local community or the local people have some skin in the game. But it also is an opportunity for smaller companies, startups, to start doing the building it. And I'm a huge fan of Northwoods Connect and SonicNet as examples, and there are examples all over the state where here the Northwoods Connect guys went to school in Rhinelander, went away to college, went away to the military, came back, started a company. They hired local people, and they're providing a service to the community. And Sonic Net's the same way. And funding for those is great, but I don't know whether this new commission will be able to put the information together to improve that from 5 million to 50 million. But 50 million is what is needed for the state. I mean, we have been very, very lucky in Oneida County. We've gotten grants every over the last 5 or 6 grants we've been awarded. Vilas County, SonicNet, and ChoiceTel have both usually gotten the grants that they've asked for. The folks up in Bayfield and northwest part of the state, I mean, they're struggling. They don't have, they're trying to get on their feet with it. They don't have a technology group that can do anything with it. I might say that there's another example in Forest County. The town chair grabbed a hold of it by the horns. You might know the town chair over in Forest, but he said, I want to cover the whole county. What does it take to do it? And he talked to Northwoods Connect, and they put a plan together for, I don't know, 17 or 20 towers, total cost of whatever, $20 million or something like that. They applied for a grant for 50% of it. And then the town or the county is putting up the, getting a low interest loan to cover the matching funds. So they got a grant, and they're doing it all in one shot, and hoping that they'll be able to cover most of the county with that one application, as opposed to what SonicNet and Northwoods Connect, or what they're doing in Oneida County and Vilas County, which is, you just slowly get a little funds and you build something, you get a little more funds and you build it. And it's frustrating for the people who say, I need services, but I can't wait. Tom's got his hand up. Unmute, Tom.
I was wondering if this tower technology is going to last for the long run. You know what I mean? As you talked earlier about how technology changes. Is it going to be good in 5 years?
Well, it's always been a big question when we ask people to put money into fixed wireless, and we go, I mean, every year the technology they're using on their towers is the same technology that the cellular companies are using on theirs. So every time there's an upgrade, they upgrade, and their point is, if we could get a FCC license that would allow us to increase the power on our licensed towers, then we could double our range and double our throughput. So technology is going to continue to improve and hopefully allow those guys to use their infrastructure to continue to expand. That's the pitch we've been making. Now, Elon Musk with a satellite network kind of changes the whole paradigm, but the fixed wireless, I think, is there. In the 5 years that we've been working it, they've done 2 major upgrades to their technology that has always improved it. So, nothing lasts forever, but in the world of technology, you're lucky if you get 3 years out of a piece of technology or a computer before something else comes along and you got to upgrade it. So that's an additional cost that these internet service providers have to continually provide. But David was asking, I was going to follow up with David's question, which was how, what can we do? And I think the best thing for Vilas County, for example, to do is to get an audience with, for example, this new commission, who seem to have the ear of, I mean, there's 2 or 3 legislators on there, to get their ear and say, what can we do to help you to get additional funding? I have yet to see anybody that's running for an office in the upcoming election that doesn't have increased broadband as one of their top objectives. But then when I ask them more about it, they all go, I don't know, what can we do? We know everybody needs it, but we don't know what to do. And there are some really smart technology people out there that know what to do. We just need to get the funding in their hands, in my mind, in my opinion. Did that answer any of your question, David?
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was any other legal things that could smooth the way as far as obstacles. I think George mentioned something that taxpayers can't fund, or I'm just thinking about, it seems to me that a state legislature, if they really were committed, they not only would come up with funding, but they'd come up with legislation that would grease the wheels and make this go easier. But I have no clue what that would be.
So, so the fixed wireless technology, I don't want to say that's the only thing they do, but fixed wireless is fairly new, and people are just getting used to the technology. But this point of towers, there may have to be some legislating. May have to be somebody that can help them deal with placement of towers. I know, back 10 years ago when everybody was installing solar panels, there were many places, homeowner association and various people like that said you can't put solar panels in our homeowner because our homeowners association thinks they look terrible. And in most states, they ended up with state legislation that allowed that to not be an obstacle. So maybe there's something like that. There probably are ways to streamline the implementation of fiber along existing corridors. I might say that the county, Oneida County, and I assume maybe Vilas County, but in Oneida County, the county has been very receptive to using their towers for Northwoods Connect internet services where they fit into the pattern. So if there's a county tower there, they've allowed equipment to go up there, and in return, they've gotten closer. They've gotten more internet services for some of their remote sites and some things like that. So there is sharing between Oneida County as well as the state, and the DNR. I had a system that we were supposed to put up over by out west, and on a DNR tower that was going to, they were going to use our tower and we were going to put it on their property, but it goes so bogged down with the lawyers that we had to cancel the whole thing. And I'm going to answer a question real quick about towers. What are the speeds of those tower systems? It's purely a function of the technology that's on the tower. So I know that Northwoods Connect has a tower implementation in the north end of Three Lakes for Wheaton College. What's the camp up there? That's owned by Wheaton College, but they have a bunch of video conferencing stuff, and they're running 50 megabit up and down for video conferencing. So most of the technologies will provide as fast as speeds as the user wants to pay for.
I just want to quickly say you had one more comment from George, which said it should be considered a utility. The profit motive should have no role. Cheaper for taxpayers to fund directly. That internet should be a public utility.
Yeah, I mean that's one way to look at it. So what that does is puts it like a public service company only allows one water utility or one electric company in a municipality, and so Wisconsin Public Service has the I'm just talking about the pros and cons. Wisconsin Public Service has the franchise to provide power to most of us. And so I can't get power any other way. And so if they're doing a great job, it's fine. If they're not doing a great job, I have no other choice. So it's a little bit of I don't know if anybody wants to fund it as a utility. I mean, certainly those are questions, but the telephone companies have all been deregulated, and the cable companies have all been deregulated. So you can have multiple competitors in the marketplace. What type of system is a CenturyLink system in the town of Boulder Junction? I assume that that's a cable organization. That's a cable, because CenturyLink pretty much does cable. And then I talked to a couple guys called me to talk to us about what we were doing, because they lived outside of town and it wasn't going to reach them, and they wanted to know what their options were. So once again, it's the same thing. They're within the town of Boulder Junction. They're going to run cable, and sort of like Choicetel is running up to Land O'Lakes. But if it's too expensive to run out to your cabin in the woods, then you won't get it. Now, I'm gonna follow that up. Sorry, with a comment that with a hybrid system. The folks at Northwoods Connect are starting to experiment with hybrid systems where they run microwave backbone, microwave internet to a tower, and then the tower serves, has a broadcast, and it serves everybody within 3 or 4 mile range. But a couple of these towers have a road right next to them that along that road are 25 houses. And so they're going to run fiber along that road from their tower, because they feel like they can provide a better service faster with less support problems with fiber. So they're building and looking at hybrid systems that combine the microwave backbone that bypasses all of the wetlands and lakes and everything, and then hits your road and then goes down the road. So this is sort of what I was saying, is that there are some very smart technical people that are trying to solve the problems if it's within the range of economics.
So real quick, I just wanted to say that Boulder Junction, that CenturyLink, it's DSL through phone lines. CenturyLink is a phone service, and that's DSL. And then also Steve had his hand up first, and then Tom.
Steven.
Yeah, I think you really hit on a good answer for both Oneida and Vilas in what you referenced earlier as far as Forest County actually borrowing the money. And I suspect that if what you said earlier about people who are not, this is not their primary residence, they probably spend 4 to 6 months here at the most. And if you could increase their staying time by 50%, if you're talking 2 to 3 months more, I mean, you would recapture a lot of that cost fairly quickly, because you're talking about a lot of extra sales tax. People would probably claim this home as their primary residence, and then would actually pay, their most of their taxes here in the state of Wisconsin, which also would be a big capture for those residents. And I think the other thing is you would also be looking at increasing, property values for a significant number of homes, because if you now have connectivity, it's a big selling point. Any realtor would back that 100%. And if you get realtors on your side and you get a good vocal group of people who really want to push for this and convince the county to take out what, right now you can borrow money for little or nothing. I mean, the banks are practically paying you to take money. So there's never been a better time to convince local people to invest in that type of infrastructure. And that's how I see it. I see it as infrastructure. I wouldn't call it a utility, but I would use that term more of an infrastructure improvement. And I think you would have a lot of success, but you'd have to have a good vocal group of people comprised of different, entities like realtors and those types of folks to really push this. But I think you'd probably see a pretty significant interest if you had a really good game plan for showing what you could bring to the table throughout the county.
It's a great point. I agree, but of course that loan still has, the principal still has to be paid back, And a lot of counties are reluctant to do that. But you're right. I think you need an overall plan that says this is how we can reach the entire county, and sort of like Forest County. Somebody made the point that there are only 9,000 people that live in Forest County, but they're all spread out. But it is a, it's everything from telemedicine to education to what Stephen was saying about people that are only spend 6 months up here. The big chunk may be the people that only spend weekends up here from Milwaukee, but would spend the whole summer up here if they could work from home, get their work done. But it's, all that needs to be pulled together. And somebody mentioned early on, it's an economic development problem. It's the economic development corp, whether it's North, what's the North, what is the economic development, Northwoods Economic Development? Is that what it's called? Or,
Yeah, I think so. I know there's more of a regional one
yeah, the
that
Northwoods
covers a
one.
couple of counties.
The person that runs that, I believe, is on that committee too. But putting a whole plan together that everybody buys off on, and then funds. I did it for 5 years. It's really hard. But back a year ago, 5 years ago, when I was asking the county for money, these county supervisors would pull their flip phone out and say, I get cell service just fine. I can answer my phone out there. I don't know why I need internet. But now when I go talk to them, they're saying, all my constituents are saying I need internet. The realtors are calling saying I can't sell this house because it doesn't have internet. And so times have changed, and over the last 4 months, I suspect they've changed even faster. So, but I don't know how you do all this fast.
Tom, did you have a question? Maybe this would be the last question.
Well, it's probably been covered a little bit, but I think, Dave, that the Northwoods Connect has been really adept at finding multiple funding sources for a lot of their towers, and some of the grants require matching funds by working with businesses. You mentioned Wheaton College, which is Honey Rock Camp, but I think that they've been really adept at approaching local businesses and putting together funding packages that have been really unique in getting these isolated spots covered.
Well, yeah, not to toot my horn, but I wrote all those grants and I raised all those money, all those extra funds, with a few exceptions. And it's really, really hard. And it's the primary reason I'm no longer on that committee, because I just, I got it $5,000 at a time, $15,000 at a time, $2,000 at a time. And it's hard. And then if the service doesn't deliver to all the people that they wanted, then they call me. So as a volunteer raising those funds, all I'm saying is that it's they raised a bunch, but they're out there they're climbing towers, trying to put stuff in. So our economic development group, that was kind of our piece to the puzzle, which was, you guys provide the technology, you tell us how to do it, we'll help you write the grants, and we'll raise the matching funds. And so we work together as a private-public partnership to do that. And that's still the way they're operating. But it's hard when, it was hard to raise $1.5 million for a $3 million grant. Now you go to Forest County, where they had a $20 or $25 million application, and they needed to raise $10 or $15 million. So it's really hard in this environment. And there are more and more people that think it's great, but there aren't very many businesses up here that have expendable funds. So it's town. When we put a tower in a town, I went to the town chair every time and said, I'm going to put this tower in. I need $15,000 from you. And, you know, the guy that came through every time for me was Scott Halowinski. And, you know, he's one of the tightest guys on the town board or on the county board. But Scott knew he had a couple companies in his town that needed internet, so he was always there to support it. Trout Station has towers. I just saw that before it went away. Yeah, I'm not very familiar with that area of Vilas and towers and stuff, but they probably have some kind of service from the state. You know, and libraries, schools, libraries and schools have pretty good internet because they're usually in an area where they have fiber running to them. And so people have always said, talk to the school district because the schools need internet. Well, the schools don't need internet, but the kids who go home need internet. And but it's not an easy problem. I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I'll echo what I think before. What I said before is I think there's some really smart people in Vilas and Oneida County, and, you know, and there's some really smart companies that I read all the grant applications that come through, and there's some guys that are doing fixed wireless in areas in northwestern Wisconsin and farther north than us that are really smart too. But they all say the same thing. There just aren't enough funds. Okay. No questions?
We have Sarah. Sarah, you want to unmute yourself?
So I have DSL, and I know Frontier is going through bankruptcy, and I don't know what their future is. And I'm assuming DSL, you're not talking about DSL because it's slower internet, plus most people are giving up their landlines because they can get their own cell service, or what's the future of DSL and Frontier?
Well, who knows what the future of Frontier is. Frontier, yeah, you're right. Frontier is going through Chapter 11. I don't think Frontier will go away, or the landlines that they have will go away. But everybody we know is dropping their landline because they have access to their cell phone. But that does not mean that you have to drop your DSL. So your DSL, if you look at your bill, you pay us one fee for DSL, one fee for a landline. So they'll drop your landline and they'll charge you a little bit more for DSL. I think the problem with Frontier is that don't expect them to make any more investments up here because of the because they have no excess funds. So most people that have DSL from Frontier are working with 1 to 3 megabits. Some people, I can't remember who it was that said, have high speed. Was that you, Sarah, that have high speed access from DSL, or was that Jane that have high speed access on DSL? And I mean, in bigger cities, DSL used to be thought of as the high speed link, and you used to be able to get 20 to 25 megabit. But I think the problem up here with Frontier is that they just don't have enough capacity into the woods, and they're not in a position to buy any more capacity. I don't know, but
and you can't give them any money because it'll just be a sinkhole, and
yeah.
I'm assuming that you can't really invest in them.
No, you can't. No, they're
so the fixed tower seems like it is the way to go. So
well, unless you can get enough money or close enough to be able to have access to fiber, it's or a hybrid system. In my mind, that's the kind of the ways to look at it. And all these guys are looking at it. All these internet service providers are trying to figure out what's the best way to provide service to these folks that's the fastest. And they all are saying, we put this tower in and we were fine delivering it to everybody. And then this year last year they said speeds requirements tripled. And then it tripled again because people want faster and faster. They're signing up for more and more. So they have to upgrade their equipment to get faster and faster internet in, which is good for them, but it's not slowing down. Steve and Tom, so how fast is your internet connection in town?
I'd say we average between 25 and 30 most
Is
of
that
the
what
time.
Spectrum?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're lucky enough to live in Rhinelander or in Minocqua is pretty good too, I understand.
And we stream a lot of movies, so we have no charter TV or anything like that. We just have internet, and so we stream a lot of movies.
So people ask me all the time, and I don't think I have to tell any of you, why do I need internet? Why do I need faster internet? Well, the cable companies are, I don't want to say they're going away, but they're the new companies that are popping up are the Peacocks and Disney Plus and ESPN Plus and everything, where they're delivering all their content via the internet. And so that's why you need faster and faster access with unlimited data.
Plus
Yeah,
Zoom.
All those people Zooming. I don't know how that's bringing everything down.
Dave, a quick comment. I've advocated probably for the last 2 years now that I think the county should literally have a grant writer that's a full-time staff person. And I think they need someone that's, knowledgeable outside of the area and is, cognizant of grants that are, federal, state, whatever. And this has to be someone who's, really well connected and really well versed on grant writing. I think a lot of these people that we get, even that work for like economic development and stuff, I'm not sure how in tune they are with a lot of these different things. And I wondered if you didn't have somebody who's really that's their full-time job, is seeking out grants, not only for developing, connectivity, but a lot of other things that we could take advantage of that position, that wouldn't, again, be someone that wouldn't be worth investing in as a staff person.
I mean, I totally agree. I worked for a large museum in Denver for 10 years, and we had 2 or 3 full-time grant writers, and they were writing grants for research projects, for hardware, for the tech guys, and they understood where the grants were offered, and they were there when the money was available. And so it's a huge resource. And that's where my background in grant writing came from. So when it came time to do grants for the Wisconsin Public Service Commission for the broadband grants, there wasn't anybody on our committee that had ever been involved in a grant. So that's how I got sucked into grant writing. But a good grant writer should pay for themselves, should be able to pay for themselves several times over. But there's a lot of money out there from foundations and stuff. You just have to know how to access it. Okay. Anybody else? So if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email or whatever. I don't know how the best way to give you my email is. Somebody knows it. You can ask around.
Do we want to type it in the comments?
I'll type it in the comments.
In the chat down there, and people
Yeah,
can.
here we go. Here's my.
Well, I'll just say thanks everybody for coming, and thanks to Laura and Fred for organizing, and thanks to Dave for coming and for speaking, and all the participants.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Sure.
Here, let's.
Thanks,
All right, good luck
Dave.
out there. I don't know what
Thank
your
you
next
so much.
step is.
Hmm?
I don't know what your next step is, but I'd be more than happy to help you with it.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
More money in Saint Germain.
Yeah.
A sane county board in Vilas.
Yeah, that's what, a sane county, I mean,
Well-
town board.
I mean, it's no different than Oneida County. There's a lot of sympathy for the applications, but they're trying to balance big budgets these days with not as many tax dollars. So there's got to be money from someplace besides the county boards, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is recording. Did you want me to cut that last part off?
No, I said that for Stephen's sake.
Say same county boards, like, oh, okay.
That was me.
Okay. All right.
Thanks,
Again, Dave.
everybody.
We love it.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks,
Sure.
Dave.
Good to see
Great.
everybody.
Oh, Julia left.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Hey,
Bye,
welcome
Lisa.
home, Lisa.
Oh, Lisa. Bye.